Welcome to FPL Selection. Today we'll take a look at how the team is shaping up for Game Week 5, but first a quick look at how we got on in Game Week 4. So 57 points all out. It was below the average this week, so it meant to drop down to almost 2.5 million. Still early days, so yeah, not too much to worry about. It's only 120 points away from first place, so yeah, not too far. It was a good week for the defence with Pope, Tarkovsky and Lacroix all getting clean sheets. Once again, Senesi hit the DEFCONs. But the attack all blanked apart from Salah, who I captained luckily. So very lucky to come away with 18 points there. But 4 out of 4 captaincies so far this season. Definitely one of the positives. But yeah, I'd be expecting a bit more from some of those attackers because I don't think any of them are bad picks really. But yeah, we move forwards and yeah, see what next week brings. Quite disappointed really from the fixtures that were there. So now looking ahead to game week 5, and first up the defence. Pope is away to Bournemouth. A tricky game for Newcastle, especially as they have Barcelona on Thursday. That's going to be a really high intensity game. It's going to be a lot of work to get through and only a couple of days rest before another intense game at Bournemouth. They've had a great start to the season as well. I'd expect Howe to play quite defensive in that one, just sort of try to avoid the transitions and chaos, that you get in most of the Bournemouth games. I'm certainly not optimistic of a clean sheet there, even though Newcastle do have the best expected goals against so far at just 2.06. But yeah, I think it's likely they'll concede, so yeah, not too much hope there at the moment. And Senesi will be on the opposite side of that game. He's hit DEFCON in all 4 games so far. And, I'd be fairly confident of hitting it in the majority of the games this season, just with the way Bournemouth play. It's very chaotic, it's end to end, so he's always going to need to make sort of blocks and tackles, clearances, being sort of the last line of defence. I think with Newcastle's attacking options, I'm not confident of a clean sheet because I think they're going to play well, on the counter in this one. So I'm not confident of a clean sheet, but, it's the reason I've picked Senesi is he's got that floor of sort of 3 or 4 points because, if he hits DEFCONs in most games, that's what you're looking at. So yeah, he's a great long-term asset and I want to play him in every match. And yeah, I think he's going to justify that as we go along in the season at only 4.6 million at the moment. And Tarkovsky is away to Liverpool. Like Senesi, he's also hit DEFCON in all 4 games. So it's the same situation with him. He's got that floor of 3 or 4 points. And, against Liverpool away, he's more than likely going to be busy. So he's probably going to hit that again. Everton haven't been great defensively this season. But I do wonder if Moyes, probably be more negative in this one, playing away at Anfield. Try and just sneak a point. Certainly no expectations of a clean sheet. But again, the reason for picking Tarkovsky is that base of 3 or 4 points, and happily take that right now. Then Lacroix is away to West Ham. They've been very hit and miss so far, and they've conceded the most from corners, I believe, this season. So I think there could be some chances there for Lacroix, who's he's always a threat in the air from corners. Palace have only conceded 1 goal this season. They have a great defensive record under Glasner. I think I've talked about that a lot actually, but since he's come in, I think they've had one of the best defences. They were at least 3rd at the start of the season, could be even better now. And especially away from home, they, very hard to score against. So, yeah, good chance of a clean sheet hit for Lacroix and potentially, some chances from corners as well. Now, moving on to the midfield, Salah is at home to Everton. He looked much better in the Atletico game in midweek. Still far from his top level, but hopefully sort of building up to some better performances. And obviously the motivation will always be there for a Merseyside derby to make an impact. As I mentioned earlier, Everton have been quite poor defensively so far, so I'm sure they're going to be more negative at Anfield because they'll be wary of the attacking weapons Liverpool have. But I'd still back Liverpool to find a couple of goals at home. And if Salah can get returns playing poorly, he can certainly get a lot more when he finds some form. So he's got my captain's armband at the moment. as I don't really see anyone else I trust with their fixture this week. And, Salah in a home fixture, always a good chance of getting something. Fernandes is at home to Chelsea. They had a difficult game in Munich on Wednesday. So United will be looking to take advantage of the fact they've got no European football and a full week to prepare for this game. Fernandes, I think, has created the most chances in the league so far. And, he was unlucky not to get an assist against City, even though the general United performance was poor, still created a big chance for Casemiro. So even though this is a tough fixture, he's just always got that chance of getting something just with the number of routes he's got the points. And I do think if he scored the penalty against Fulham, I know it's an if and a but generally he is very good at penalties. If he'd scored that one, he'd be averaging 5 or 6 points per game so far, and I think a lot more people would be looking to bring him in. So yeah, I certainly wouldn't write him off just because it's Chelsea. It's a home game. He's got the opportunities of different routes to get his points, and yeah, you wouldn't be surprised if he gets another penalty. The way that United are sort of attacking the box at the moment, there's quite a few tricky players that have always got the chance of being fouled and giving Fernandes the penalties. And Reinders is away to Arsenal. He looked much better in the United game last week and probably should have come away with at least one goal. He was timing those runs into the box really well. He made some runs beyond Haaland, which, very promising, from an attacking point of view. I mean, Arsenal's defence will obviously be really tough to break down, but I think it's going to take something, along the lines of a late run into the box, just well-timed run that's going to just, break the deadlock. So, yeah, I think some people might bench him this week, but I've got the faith because I saw enough last week to suggest that he's going to get in the positions to score goals. So, yeah, maybe not got a high ceiling in this one, but yeah, I'm definitely going to play him. And Barnes is away to Bournemouth. I've already lost patience with him, to be honest, with the 2 fixtures so far. And I'll likely transfer him out next week as he hasn't looked anywhere near his best. I did see he had a baby in the last couple of weeks, so maybe that's been on his mind. All the mums and dads out there, we all know about that. So, yeah, I can't blame him for that. But I do think this game should suit Newcastle's attack. As I was saying earlier, Bournemouth games are quite end-to-end and chaotic. So if Newcastle set up properly, they'll want to play on the counter. The likes of Barnes, Elanga, Murphy, try and exploit the empty spaces. He's starting the Barcelona game tonight, so I will try to judge from that, seeing depending on what minutes he gets, if I think he starts at the weekend. And, if I'm fairly sure he's going to start and get at least an hour or so, then, yeah, there's a good chance I'll start him this week. I'm moving on to the forwards. Ekitike is at home to Everton. It's probably my most difficult choice this week. Isak started the Champions League game midweek and Ekitike played the last 30 or so minutes. So I guess the question is, does that mean he'll start this one? I do think so. I think it's the kind of game you don't want to put Isak in if he's not fully fit. There'll be some tackles flying in, and I think he'll probably start, and then Isak might come on later in the game. We'll just have to listen to Slot's press conference and, make an educated guess. There might be some early leaks as well. It's the first game on Saturday, so we can keep an eye out there. But to be honest, I'll probably start him even if I do get some information that he's on the bench. My alternatives at the moment, none of them stand out to me that they're going to be better than 30 minutes of a Liverpool number 9 at home. But we've definitely now reached the point where he's probably a sell next week, unless he produces a really top performance with a couple of goals. I just think it's going to be such a headache every week. Is he going to start? Is Isak going to start? It's going to be difficult to justify keeping him, I think, once we start getting to that point. And Watkins is away to Sunderland. Villa have the second worst XG so far in the league, and they're the only team yet to score a goal. I'll repeat myself from last week. Surely a team of this quality can't go, 5 games without a goal. If he can't find a goal or assist, he'll likely be on the chopping board for next week. But I'd be really surprised if they can't get a positive result, against Sunderland, and a return for Watkins would be nice. But yeah, you just can't see a squad of that quality and a manager like Emery not being able to fix the issues and get a result at, a newly promoted side, even though they do, they've looked decent so far and added a lot of quality to the squad. And Mateta is away to West Ham. He was unlucky not to score last week against Sunderland. Their keeper had an excellent game. Palace will certainly be looking to play on the counter as they usually do away from home. Mateta is always the main threat there. I think Pino looked a good addition to their attack, and they've got Kamada there as the eye for a pass. So, obviously with Eze gone and Sarr injured, it looks like, it's not too far of a drop-off now. And he's obviously the main man on penalties. So against his poor West Ham defence, there should be some opportunities for him. And I'll be really disappointed if he's not going to get anything against Sunderland or West Ham 2 weeks in a row. So in summary, I'm fairly set on Salah captain. Maybe I would consider Watkins if he was in form, but there's no way I'd trust him or Villa at the moment. And nobody else is sort of jumping out to me, to go against Salah in a home game. I think Watkins or Fernandes will likely be the vice-captain. I do have a bit of a benching dilemma this week, as it does seem like Saliba is fit. He was on the bench midweek, but didn't come on. So I don't know if that means he's ready or whether he was just there, just maybe they just wanted him to travel with the squad. I'm not sure, but for City at home, you'd imagine they want him to play, even if he's only sort of 80 to 90% fit. Although Mosquera has played well in his place, but if we get some indication that he's going to play, then I may very well start him ahead of Tarkowski or Barnes, as I do think, the DEFCON points should be there against City in, the way that Arsenal will probably set up. And, they love to play for a clean sheet in these home games against the top sides. So, one to look at closer to the deadline and then, see what we think. So that's it for this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.